Picture this. You get paid on Monday. By the time you go to spend it on Friday, it's already worth less. Not a little less. Noticeably less. That's not a nightmare. That was a real country in living memory. Poland, 1989. By the end of that year, inflation had hit nearly 640%. At its worst, prices were jumping by double digits in a single month. Your salary didn't lose value over years. It lost value over lunch. The shelves were empty. People stood in line for hours, for sugar, for meat, for a bar of soap. The government was effectively bankrupt. After 45 years of communism, the country was, by almost every measure, on the floor. And then one man walked in with a plan so brutal that economists around the world said it would tear Poland apart. It did the opposite. Here's what you don't know about how it actually worked, and why the pain was the whole point. Let's be clear about how bad the bottom really was. For nearly half a century, Poland ran a command economy. One central planner decided what got made, how much, and what it cost. No real prices, no real competition. One giant state bank instead of a banking system. On paper, prices were stable. In reality, the shortages were the price. You didn't pay more for meat. There just wasn't any meat. People joked that the only thing in endless supply was vinegar. To buy basics like sugar, you didn't just need money. You needed ration cards. Imagine standing in a line that wraps around the block, holding a paper coupon, hoping the shelf isn't empty by the time you reach the front. Then doing it again tomorrow. That was normal life. By the late 1980s, the whole thing was cracking. To cover its bills, the government did what broke governments always do. It printed money. A lot of it. That's when the hidden inflation came roaring out into the open. Nearly 640% by 1989. Poland had the worst inflation in the entire Eastern Bloc except for Yugoslavia. And it owed foreign lenders tens of billions of dollars it had no way to repay. So much that it couldn't even cover the interest. A bankrupt government, an empty store, and money that melted in your pocket. All at the same time. So this is the starting line. Not a struggling economy. A collapsing one. Enter Leszek Balcerowicz. Not a politician. An economist. A quiet, stubborn academic who'd spent years studying exactly one question. How do you turn a dead command economy into a living market one? In late 1989, after the first non-communist government in decades took power, they handed Balcerowicz the title of finance minister and deputy prime minister. And with it, the worst job in Europe. Everyone had advice, and almost all of it said the same thing. Go slow. Ease the pain. Reform gently, step by step, so people don't get hurt. Balcerowicz looked at the math and said no. Here's his logic, and it's the heart of this whole story. If you free prices but keep printing money, you don't get a market. You get permanent hyperinflation. If you cut subsidies but protect the dying factories, you just keep the corpses on life support. Every half measure gets gamed by the half you didn't fix. There's an old line that fits perfectly. You can't cross a chasm in two small jumps. So he decided to jump. January 1st, 1990. One date, almost everything changed at once. Roughly 10 laws hit on the same day. Think of it as flipping every switch in the building simultaneously. Prices freed. Overnight, the state stopped setting them. About 90% of price controls were gone. The currency, made convertible and devalued to a real market rate, then anchored so it couldn't freefall. The money printer, switched off. Hard limits on the money supply, with high interest rates to choke inflation. Subsidies to state factories, cut. If a business couldn't survive without a government drip feed, it would have to sink or change. Trade borders, opened. Suddenly the world's products, and the world's competition, could come in. This was the package the whole world started calling shock therapy. Designed in a few weeks, partly on ideas from American economist Jeffrey Sachs, and pushed through before the old system could fight back. Why all at once instead of gently? Because a market isn't a list of features you add one at a time. It's a system. Prices only mean something if money is scarce. Money is only scarce if you stop printing it. Factories only get efficient if they can actually fail. You can't have one without the others. So Balcerowicz turned them all on together. Now the part the inspirational version of this story skips. The first months were brutal. When real prices kicked in, a lot of factories discovered an ugly truth. They had only ever worked because the state was secretly paying for them. Without the drip feed, they couldn't survive. Plants closed. Whole industries shrank. Unemployment, which had officially been near zero because the state pretended to employ everyone, exploded. By 1993, it had climbed past 16%. For a generation raised on the promise of a guaranteed job, that number was a sledgehammer. Real wages fell. Savings got hammered. People who had played by every rule their entire lives watched the security they were promised simply evaporate. Picture a man who'd worked the same factory line for 25 years. His whole town was built around that one plant. In the old system, his job was guaranteed for life. In the new one, his plant only existed because the state had been quietly covering its losses. When that stopped, the plant stopped, and there was no other employer in town. Multiply that by hundreds of towns. That was the first winter of shock therapy. And the critics? They were loud. "We told you so," they said. "This is what happens when you choose shock over compassion." Here's where the story splits into two paths. Poland could have done what everyone begged for. The gentle, gradual path. Reform a little, protect a lot, spread the pain over decades, so no single year hurt too much. It sounds kinder. So let's see how the two paths actually played out. But here's the thing about ripping the bandage off. Within weeks, something strange happened. The empty shelves started filling up. Within a single month, farmers and small traders, finally allowed to sell at real prices, were lining the streets with produce. Goods that had been impossible to find for decades just appeared. The shortages that had defined daily life, gone in months. Then the numbers turned. Inflation that had been around 250% in 1990 fell to roughly 70% in 1991. By 1992, the economy stopped shrinking and started growing again. By the mid-1990s, Poland did something no other former communist country had managed. It became richer than it had been before the whole transition started. First one to climb all the way back. And it didn't stop there. From 1995 to 1997, the economy grew about 6.5% a year. By 1997, inflation was finally back under 10%. The state's share of the economy fell from over 90% to around 40%. A real private sector, the thing that had been illegal for decades, was now the engine. The pain had been front-loaded. The payoff was just beginning. Now zoom out, because this is where it gets almost unfair. Poland didn't just recover. It went on one of the longest growth streaks in modern European history. Decade after decade, it kept climbing. Remember 2008, the financial crash that hammered the United States and dragged most of Western Europe into recession? Poland was the only economy in the entire European Union that did not fall into recession that year. The brutal medicine from 1990 had built something tough enough to take the punch the rest of the West couldn't. A country that started the 1990s as one of the poorest in Europe is now the sixth largest economy in the European Union. Its economy didn't just recover. In real terms, it has more than doubled in size since the reforms. Income per person has climbed to roughly 80% of the EU average. Closing in on the West, it once trailed by a mile. Meanwhile, several of the countries that chose the kinder path, reform slowly, protect everything, never shock the system, are still stuck. Many never caught up. Call it the gradualism trap. Going slow feels safer, it looks more humane. But a system that's already collapsing doesn't reward patience. A slow bleed can be deadlier than fast surgery. The countries that tried to avoid the shock often just signed up for a longer, quieter version of the same pain, without the recovery on the other side. Now, let's be fair, because this is where most videos lie to you. Shock therapy was not painless, and it was not perfect for everyone. Older workers in single industry towns got crushed. Pensioners on fixed incomes lost ground. Inequality rose. Real people paid a real price, and some of them never fully recovered. Pretending otherwise would be dishonest. And Poland didn't win on willpower alone. It had a few things going for it that you can't just copy. A new government with genuine public trust after solidarity. An educated workforce. The promise of joining Europe pulling it forward. And in 1991, foreign creditors agreed to forgive about half of its crushing debt, a lifeline most collapsing countries never get. So the lesson here is not always rip the bandage off. That's too simple, and in the wrong situation, it's dangerous. The real lesson is sharper than that. When a system is genuinely dying, the cautious-sounding option isn't always the safe one. Sometimes the responsible path, slow, gentle, protect everyone, is the one that quietly kills the patient. And the move that looks reckless is the one that actually saves it. So back to that one man. One economist. One plan. A country the whole world had written off. Everyone told him the pain meant he was wrong. But the pain wasn't a flaw in the plan. It was the price of admission. Poland paid it fast and got 30 years of growth in return. So the next time someone tells you the safe, slow, gentle path is always the responsible one. Remember the country that chose the opposite. The one that swallowed the worst year on purpose and rebuilt itself from the floor up. You think you know how money works. This is how it really works. If you like stories where the obvious answer turns out to be the wrong one, subscribe. We've got a lot more of them coming.